Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Tryon. Welcome to the Block of the Month Club. I can't believe how many great blocks we've got done or are working on so far. If we're counting them all up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so we're on block 5, and we're going to make 2 of those blocks in this class. And I've got on the other side of the camera there a little design wall going where I can see all of my progress, and it's very exciting to see them coming together. Nice big blocks that we've been making so far. This is tonight's, and it's called the Northern Star. So I've got one made already. I'll go through making the second one because, of course, we need 2 of these blocks for our Barn Star sampler, and we'll get going right away. We are starting block 5. Finish the tulip star, and here we are, block 5, page 21. And here we're going to start really practicing squares, like a square in the middle, like a square in the square. And really, these sampler blocks are going to really help us practice our points. And it's going to be the kind of thing where when you do a quilt like this, and you've got block after block where you're practicing these, similar techniques, you're going to get good. And I'm going to give you some extra tips along the way here to make sure we're not cutting off any of those beautiful points. So the cutting is all pretty straightforward here. Nothing strange. Be sure to be adding your fabrics to your sheet. As always, we want to keep track of our fabrics on our little legend. But I'll get going since we've done that a few times and you get the idea. And we'll get jumping right into making the blocks. So I'm starting here with fabric A and B. And I just want to point out that if you're kind of jumping in or you're watching for the first time and you're starting here and you're then going to go back, we're using the Barn Star sampler book, and a lot of the techniques that are in many of these blocks are really highlighted starting on page 74. And it really goes through doing a corner unit, making flying geese. And that's these blocks are that are coming are heavy in these. And so if you need a little refresher or a bit more in depth, or you need to really look at written instructions, even though I'm going to go through it, 74, 75, 76, these are all really good illustrations of how to do some of these special techniques, but we'll get to that. Okay, I've got my iron hot because 70% of quilting is pressing. So the iron, full blast, good, ready to go. I've got my squares cut. So I'm going to start with, I do want the book a little handier because I do need to look at it. And so even though I'm doing 1 here, you're going to want to do 8 at once because we're making 2 blocks. And just a reminder that in the instructions, it's going to give you the instructions on how to make 1 block. But because we're making this whole quilt, it's calling for 2 blocks. So I'm doubling it. So even though in many parts of the instructions here, for example, under the first instruction, it says make 4 units, we're going to make 8. And under this one, make 4 units, we're making 8. So you'll hear me say you're going to do this 8 times. And I'm going to encourage you to chain piece these, not to do them 1 at a time, because everything's going to go much, much quicker if you chain piece. So we're going to start with our A piece, and we are putting it together with B. And we're going to go right sides together. And of course, we're going to sew that 1/4-inch seam. And then we've got sort of B waiting in the wings here with C. And you'll notice that's how they're laying it out here. That this is all going to go together to make 1 unit in the end. But we have to start by with the building blocks. So B is going right sides together on A, and then this is going to go right sides together here. And if you do that for all 8, then you can come ahead and chain piece these all at once. I am using my brand new M8. Very excited. Just took it out of the box. This is its inaugural stitch. So you're here with me. I was using the HP foot on my 9480 prior to this. And even though I'm a proponent of using the same machine, during whatever project you're making, I'm still using the HP foot on this machine. So I thought it was okay. All right, here we go with the M8. So excited. So much throat space here. All right. So yeah, just a 1/4 inch foot, like. Okay, and then you can so you'll do all 8 of yours there, and then bring up piece B and C. And I maybe don't need to go that fast, even though she can, doesn't mean I should. All right. And I can get rid of my little stickers here. I know what's what at this point. And now, again, in your book, it's going to show you with that tiny little arrow right there and there, what way to press the sides so that we can nest these together. So I'm pressing towards the white right here. And then I'm pressing towards the blue on this unit here. And then we are going to nest these together. Now you're going to do this again with all 8. So side B is on this side, and then on this side, side B is here. So we can kind of make that corner unit that we see, in the full block. See what I mean? But there's still another step because we need those little wings to come off. We'll get there. We'll get there. All right. So nesting means right sides together, and then we're putting those seams that are pressed the opposite way, we're butting them right together and putting a pin right down the center of that seam. And that's how we get those seams to line up. And I'm not too worried if something is sticking off a little at the edge here, or like you can see, I've got a little bit of white there. As long as I know these seams are together, that's the main thing. Because often we have a little bit of wiggle room to trim. So if those seams are nested, I'm happy. Now I can bring it over. You'll bring all 8 of yours over to be sewing for 2 blocks. We need lots of these corner units in for 2 blocks. Now, this is flipping up. It's getting caught on the presser foot. So when you see that happen, stop with your needle down, lift up, and then keep going. Try not to let it flip over. I mean, it's not like your quilt's going to be wrecked or anything. It's not the end of the world, but it will make for a little hump that you have to, sew over when you're quilting it. Or I'll sew over if I'm going to long arm it for you. Yeah. All right. I'm happy to long arm it. This is going to be such a big, nice quilt. All right. I'm just going to give this a little roll here. That always helps before you bring it to the iron. If you know it's going to get pressed this way, which is what the instructions say here, if you give it that little, and then you can see here our seams are nice and matched up. That's because of that nesting. And then with that little press, now when I bring it, to the iron, I have a bit of an easier time rather than just flipping it over with the iron. That's often how you end up with a little extra fabric that goes wasted with the pressing. Okay, so you will have 8 of these units, 4 for each of the blocks, 8 in total. And you can, we're not setting it aside yet because we have to make the little wings at the top here to make it into a star. I don't really think they're called wings. All right, but we are going to take the D piece now. Got lots of D pieces. And I want to say one of the, oh, I need a pencil. Is there one over there? Thank you. One of the longest parts of this block is drawing the lines on the back of all of these 2.5-inch squares. So that's a job that you'll probably start now, and you may as well just go ahead and do them all at once. If you have the laser for your machine, then this is the block to use it on, because there is tons of drawing the lines. And I probably should have brought the laser up, but this, if you have one, this is the time to use it, because there's tons of drawing, and the laser just beams that light right across so that you don't have to draw it on. You can see where the middle is as you bring it into your machine, but it's on my machine downstairs, and you can easily move the laser from machine to machine. I just forgot to bring it up. Okay, so we're going to draw the line down, and it's not just this color. It's basically all the colors. The E's also, the A's and the E's. So if you want to pause the video and do your drawing, it'll take you a little bit to get them all drawn on. You may as well do the E's at the same time, because you're going to need the lines on those too. But again, if you're lucky and you have a laser, this is the time to use it, and you can skip this drawing step. But I'll be in the trenches with anyone who doesn't have a laser. Sometimes you just have to use what you've got, and sometimes you can treat yourself. Oh, that one's got a line, good. That one's got a line, good. Okay, so I'll set the E's aside because I don't need those quite yet, but I'll be ready when we do. All right, so I'm going to bring the corner block that I just made, and we're going to make a corner unit, or like a corner square here. And now if you need a little bit of extra help, apart from what I'm saying here, in the book, we mentioned starting on page 74, it talks about making corner units and flying geese and what they call house units. But we're doing the corner unit here. And this is exactly what's happening, where we've drawn the line and we're putting it in the corner, and we're going to sew directly on that line. And so that's what's happened. I've got that line here. And then I'm going to also place one on the bottom side. You want to make sure that your line is facing the correct direction. If you put the line this way and sew this way, you're not going to have the right shape for your block. You need the line to start on the left and come down. Start like towards the middle on the left and come down. So you can pin it on or just bring them over one at a time. What I'd probably suggest doing is, because you're going to do 8 of these at once, is to do the top one or the bottom one, whichever. Do all 8, take it off, and then bring your second piece over, do all 8 in a chain, and then we'll trim it at the end. All right. Now, there's no 1/4 inch seam here. I'm sewing directly on the line. And I need to just slow this beast down. Okay. And, check your squares, because if you're trying to square up the corner here, and if it's kind of bowing in or not straight across, you have the chance now to zip it out before you trim it. So take a look and make sure you're able to achieve a fairly square point here. I mean, there's a little bit of cheating that can be done in the seam allowance for sure, but you want it to look fairly square. I've got like a wee bit of bowing here. I think that's when I took my hand off to turn down the machine. It kind of came out a little, but I'm okay with that. It doesn't look too bad. So I'm going to put the second one down. Let's make sure we're going in the right direction. Down, like from the left down into the right, and sewing right on that line. I'm just going to start a little slower. If your machine is having problems getting that point, take a couple of your scrap pieces and start with a leader fabric. Start sewing in the middle of just a scrap piece of fabric and keep going, and then bring this one up to it. I'll show you how to do it. Of course, all my waste that I've been cutting, I've been sewing and turning into these little half square triangles. So as we go, there's lots of this kind of thing that you can be sewing together, and I'll be doing some as we go too. But you could just take a little piece of fabric. Sorry, I'm like really in the shot here. Take a little piece of fabric like this, start in the middle, start sewing anywhere, doesn't matter where, just so that you can then bring this piece up and it's already engaged. Jason, will you just turn down the iris on this one just a wee bit since we backed it up? It's a little bit hot. So once you do that, everything is already engaged. That leader fabric really will prevent the point from getting stuck down inside your needle plate. The other thing you can do if you don't have an HP foot is if your machine has a straight stitch needle plate, this would be a great time to use it because we've got lots of those little points coming underneath the needle and you don't want the fabric getting stuck down in. There we go. And I'm just sewing right on that line. And you're going to do that on all 8 of those corner units. And then you've got, yes, that little leader, but then you just snip that off at the end. And then just take a look before you trim. Give it a little, does it look fairly square before you commit to lopping off the ear? Yeah, looks good. So now you can take your ruler and just line up your 1/4 inch mark along that stitch line, and we're going to cut off that little extra. And those are the things that I've been sewing together as I've been going, because we got to make something at the end with all of this extra. So I'm just like with all the other blocks, I'm taking this directly to my sewing machine, because if I don't do it now, I'll just have a heap of unsewn triangles that if I would have sewn them at the time would already be matched up. So I'm just going to let that live on there. And I'm going to chop off the other side. And you're going to do this with all 8. So you'll have 16 to trim. And if you're feeling brave and things are lining up, you could layer them up and trim 2 or 3 at once. I did that, but I'll warn you, you have to make sure that things are lining up, because you don't want to inadvertently trim off the wrong thing. But I found it worked fairly well. It saved quite a bit of time rather than trimming one at a time. So if you're feeling confident, you can go ahead and layer up your corner units and trim off, 2 or 3 at once. Okay, so this is looking good. I can bring it over to my iron. We are pressing towards the white. Oh, excuse me. Pressing towards the white. It's live. There's nothing I can do about the sneezing. If we were editing, I'd probably take the sneeze out, but here we are. Remember, if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments. I'm not going to the comments while we're doing the actual class so that we can keep moving, but I will go back through after. Okay, so that is a corner unit, and you'll need a total of 8 of these for 2 blocks, so 4 for each block. I'm going to set this aside now, and we're going to start making the side units. And the side units, if we're taking a look at the whole block, they're actually used in the middle at the side. It's these here. But in the instructions, they call them the side unit. And this is where we're also going to get quite practiced at keeping our points alive, not trimming them off, and learning to do this square in a square. There's a lot of square in a square in this in this whole quilt, actually. But it's really great practice at making sure we're preserving those points. So let's get our F fabric, okay? And then we're going to get 2 Ds and 2 Es. This is not D. This is, yeah, it's D. Yeah, D and E. Okay. So what happens now is we have to be careful that we're going in, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but we do want to try to go in an order here. And it doesn't say that in the instructions, but you'll notice that you need to not do the top 2. Well, I guess you could, but no, you really can't. You have to go top, and then you have to go bottom, and then you need to go, after these are sewn, then you can bring the other 2 in. Otherwise, you'll be folding over you have to kind of finish the whole thing. So I found it just easier to do it this way. I guess you can do it the other way, but this is how I'm doing it. So follow me or not. Well, I think we'll all get there in the end. So I'm going to start in the top left, and make sure the line, it's hard to see the line that I drew there, but it's there. The line is starting from the middle and going down to the left. And then the E piece, the line will also start on the right middle and come down into the left middle. So you're going to do this for all 8 of yours. Part of what I also like about sewing those little half square triangle waist is that we also already have the leader fabric often on our machine, because we can sew those little cut off pieces right away. Okay, so you'll chain piece all 8 of yours. And I can throw my little chain into my pile of whatever we're going to make out of that. And bring over my next piece. And again, we're just sewing on that line. And this is also when you want to, before you, don't just cut it off right away. Check to make sure you're really making the square. You don't have too much bowing happening somewhere, or that nothing's falling too far off the edge. I actually don't mind if it's a little off the edge. Like you can see this one's a little off the edge, as long as the white or your middle isn't off, because this can always get trimmed. Yeah, so that looks okay. And how about up here? Actually, that looks kind of right on the money. Good. So now we can trim. So if you've done all 8, you can layer some up and trim them. But we trim before we press. So we have to do this side before we do the other, so that it's laying flat enough. Oh, I don't want to pull that apart. I want to sew these right away. And next one. And, you know, I remember telling you guys at the beginning, this quilt has a ton of fabric. And that's because there's all these little pieces that get cut off. So give that a little press before we actually press it. Now we've got our 2 sides. I'll just press it quick before we bring our other one. Okay, and now Make sure your line is going from the middle at the top down to the left middle. And then your bottom one, when we bring that one, it's going to go from here to here. Again, if you have the laser, don't worry about the drawing step. Make sure you're sewing from the middle down. And these squares and squares really do challenge our accuracy. It doesn't mean if you're off that it's ruined by any stretch, but you just really do notice, like, oh, I did kind of bow that there, or oh, I didn't quite line that right up. And it's just the kind of thing, the more of these you do, the more skilled you're gonna get. You're gonna notice it right away. All right, so there, right on the line. Okay, and then just give it a check before you slice it up. Looks pretty good. And again, just lining up the 1/4 inch line on my ruler right on top of those stitches so that I'm leaving a 1/4 inch. I'm using this cute rotating mat. That way everything stays nice and lined up. Sew these quickly. Okay. All right, let's check it out. Yes. And so that is our square in a square. Now, sometimes it's hard to see that this is a square in a square because we've got 2 different fabrics here. But if these were the same fabric, this square would be in that square. Cool. All right, I'm going to press it. And just doing that little roll at the beginning does make the pressing much neater, since you're not trying to flip it with your iron or burning your hands. So yeah, that looks good on that side. You're going to make 8 of these, and they should measure 4.5 by 4.5. And I do have some little scraggly corners here. So let's go in and trim this up, 4.5 by 4.5. So I'm just lining up one of the corners on my mat just so I can get sort of a baseline. And then I'm going to measure over to the 4.5 mark and take off anything that is sticking out beyond that. That can get trimmed. And this is where the rotating mat really earns its keep, in not having to, once you're trimming up, not having to, sorry about my head, not having to move your square. So 4.5, that side actually looks pretty good. This is the side that really needed it. See, quite a bit there. That's okay. Trimming off is no problem. It's when you don't have enough that things start to get a little like, ooh. All right. So you'll do that for all 8 of your square in a square blocks. All right, so we still have a little bit of work to do to make the side units. Whoops, sorry, to make the side units. We still need to make a flying geese unit so that the end result looks more like this. So you've got left your G piece and an E and 2 E's, and you've already got the lines on those if you went ahead and drew all the lines on at the beginning. So G and 2 E's, and we'll go ahead and make a flying geese unit. Again, if you need a little bit of help with that, you can go to page 74 for the written instructions, but I'm going to take you through it now. All right, so on the one side of the larger unit, we're just laying down the square, and we've got that line that's going from the top center down diagonally, and we're going to sew right on that line. And so you can go ahead and line up all 8 of yours, and if you want to do the left side here with me, you can, but you'll chain piece all 8 on the one side and sewing directly on that line. And you'll notice I've just sort of got my finger on that. You don't need to like mess around with it like this too much. It'll sew straighter if you just kind of let it go in on its own. You know, the feed dogs, especially on these, you know, big machines, are so good that, you know, they really only know how to go straight. So you may as well just let it do its job. All right, just give it a little check. Looks good. Now you do need to trim this and press it before you add the second side. So do them all, do the one side first, check, looking okay, it looks good. And now we can do just what we were doing with the other units, is on that stitch line, line up the 1/4 inch mark on our ruler so that we're leaving just a 1/4 inch on and taking off the rest. Again, now I've got that little piece I can sew for scrap. Okay. And now you can press this or just finger press or roll it. I'm just going to go ahead and really press it. With flying geese, it's best if you're bringing it, like if you bring it to the machine, it's got this bit of pop on it. Nothing lays as flat. So just press it. And then once you've got that side, you're going to make sure your line is going this way. Okay that it overlaps onto that side. That's what's going to allow us to have a 1/4 inch seam from here to here that we can sew over and still maintain the point. So now we're going to sew right on that line. Again, I'm not mussing with this too much. My finger's just keeping it in line. I'm not even using my left hand at all. Just let it do its thing. And it ends right at that point. Whenever I move it, like typically with my left hand, or I'm turning down the speed or something like that, that's when I get a wobble. All right, so that looks pretty good. All right, trim it off. I'm going to sew that. You guys have to help me think of something cool to make with all of these half square triangles. Should it be its own thing? Like its own quilt? Do we even have enough? Who knows? I guess I'll test it out and let you guys know. Or we can make them into tons of little small things. Probably the best idea is to start sewing them together into, you know, maybe like 10-inch blocks or something like that. Because that way we either have sheets of half square triangles that can be blocks inside of something bigger, or we can decide to add them all together. Either way. Okay, so that's the flying geese unit. It should measure 2.5 by 4.5, and I think I'm going to be pretty well on the money here. Sometimes my flying geese get a little bowing up here, but this is looking, see, the more you do, the more you improve. It's good. All right, let's just make sure I don't have to trim any off. I got a little bowing. Can't toot my horn too much. So 2.5, yeah. All right, looks pretty good. So you're going to have 8 of these, and then we're going to bring it together. Once you've got all your 8 done, just make sure you're bringing the correct points together, because you'll see in the pattern, just make sure that it's going together so that you're making sort of this bow tie with your blues. That's the side you want to come together. You don't want it to go together this way. So we're getting that part of the star there, okay? And then right sides together. And this is where I want to give you the first tip here today on really maintaining your points. So when we fold this over and go right sides together, there's really nowhere to nest. However, I'm going to just peel this back and just have a little look. Is this even? If you're getting kind of a square there when you pull it back, it's looking even. You can go ahead and put a little pin there. I'm just kind of putting it, well, yeah, probably right down the center is the best way to go. But I also want you to note, and it's very hard to see on camera for sure, but I want you to note where the point is stitched here. And I want you, when you're doing your 1/4 inch, even if you have to move your 1/4 inch over a little bit that way, I don't want you to go past that stitched point. Because if you do, you're sewing over your point. And if you always, now we're in luck here because both sides of this have a point. So we can only see one side. But if the back side was a solid, sew on the side where you can see at least one of the points. Like right there is where the stitching is, right there. And so I'm going to keep my 1/4 inch just brushing to the right of that stitch mark. That way, I'm ensured that I'm not sewing over my point and those points are protected. So let's try, see if my tip works here. And so you might have to take it a little slower. Make sure you're not, flopping over the seam allowance here. Don't run over your pin. And note that point is right in there. And I'm just going to stay to the right of it. I mean, I'm still in my 1/4 inch seam. But let's see here. See, and now neither of our points are cut off. Neither of our points are cut off. If I sewed right on it, maybe we'd have a little less blue in the middle. You could try that. But while you're getting used to it, if you're especially having trouble with your points getting cut off, just be conscious of where your stitch line is on the back here. And now those points meet. All right, the instructions want us to press this towards the square. So I'm going to give it a little roll here first. Make sure my seams are flat on both sides. And that's what it looks like. All right. So you'll need to make 4 of these units for each block. So 8 in total. So do all of that assembling, and then it's time to start putting the whole thing together. And with this block, we don't have any work to do in our center square. It's just the F piece. And so we're getting off nice and quick here. You can bring one of your corner units this way, okay, to your F piece. So like I always like laying things out so we can really see. And you're going to bring this corner unit and this corner unit together. And in the end, they're going to make this strip here, right? So we're going to go right sides together. And we'll go right sides together. And sew a 1/4 inch along here. Now, do I have a place to nest here? If you do, yes, I do. I forgot about this. So here and here is your place that you can nest. So you're going to want to put a pin. Even if it's going over the edge a little on the ends, you want that point to nest. Okay? There's no nesting points here, so just try to make it as even as you can. I'll bring my other one over. Don't run over your pin, and don't let the seam flop up. And now, even though you might not think you need to, lay it out again. I've even sewn them together like this. Like, it happens. Just lay it out again, and then it won't happen. And even then, sometimes it happens. So lay it out, right sides together, and then right sides together, and we're going to nest that seam here. Taking one side, butting it up against the other. And sewing along those seams. Careful not to let my seam flip up. Bring the next one. Okay. Now, we do want to make sure we're paying attention to the pressing instructions here. We want to press the middle. So we've got our 3 rows here. You're going to want to press the top and the bottom out towards the corner squares, and the center row in towards the center square. So this one's coming out, this one's going in. We could have wheeled it with the thing first too. And then just give the whole row here a little press, because now it's coming together and we want everything laying super flat. Take a look. Did any of the seams inadvertently get flipped? No, it's looking pretty good. Okay. Then this time we want these seams going out towards, ooh, look at this. Not good. Good catch. All right, so in this case, you can see I obviously had a little bit of making up to do and a seam allowance here. And I was sewing this side on the bottom and I didn't catch it. It's much better to catch something like this now than once it's been assembled. So let's just go and sew another 1/4 inch seam right along there, or you could take that whole thing out. And I'm going to sew it with the back side up this time so I can make sure I'm catching it. But holes, they happen. They really do happen. I want to say it's not your fault, but whose fault is it? Blame it on me. Okay, there. Taken care of. It's not the end of the world. It does happen. But it's also good to check and fix while you're, before it's all assembled. You know, often we're long arming and finding holes at that stage, which that's tough. Much, much tougher. Way easier to just do it right now. All right, give that a nice press. Anything flipped up? No, looks good. Okay. So now we want to nest these seams. Look how nice that's going to look. So right sides together, bringing the one side, the other side, and we want to pin that. So we want to feel that little hump. Pin right down the middle. And then this side too, feel that hump with our finger and our thumb. Bring it together. Even if it means you have to stretch or kind of let it slack a little, that's what's going to keep those points nice and precise. All right, off we go. Careful your seams don't flip up along the way here. Especially when you're stopping or getting close to the pin. Don't let your, just keep that down. Okay. And then we're going to nest this side here and here. Good. Side two. And off we go. See, I was kind of adjusting there to make sure I didn't end up with a hole because I had this little spot that came over. So let's just check. Points look good. Very good. Nothing's cut off. No holes. All right. So now the final press is up towards the end rows. So we're pressing up and up, or down and up, not towards the center. There we go. One northern star, two northern stars. I think there's only supposed to be one North Star. But we've got two. That's how good we are. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. This block comes together quite nicely and really lets you practice preserving those points. So I hope this has been helpful. Keep working on your barn star. We're getting there. Now we've got 10 blocks done. Good job. See you next time.